There's an uncomfortable truth that almost no one dares to say aloud. Those who win the games of life are rarely the kindest, the fairest, or the most well-intentioned. Usually, those who understand how power truly works win. And no, this has nothing to do with being cruel or wicked. It has to do with seeing the world as it is, not as you would like it to be. Machiavelli already warned that politics guided by reality, not ideals, separates the rulers from the ruled. While some believe that good intentions are enough, others apply decisions based on real human nature and advance without asking permission. The problem is that almost no one taught you this, and perhaps they didn't even want you to learn it. Manipulators don't win because they are smarter, nor because they are morally superior. They win because they understand something simple. Predictable people are easy to manipulate. They master the appearance of virtue. They know when to smile, when to be silent, when to retreat, and when to apply the calculated use of force, often without raising their voices. While you were taught to be agreeable, they learned to be strategic. While you sought to be loved, they understood that it's better to be feared than loved, as long as they know how to avoid being hated. And the most ironic thing, they almost never seem dangerous at first glance. That's precisely why they work. Perhaps you've experienced this firsthand. You did everything right. You were correct, you were loyal, you were understanding, and yet you lost ground, respect, or opportunities. It wasn't bad luck, it was a lack of preparation. The end justifies the means not as an excuse for malice, but as a warning. Those who don't learn to play the game end up being played. This video isn't about becoming a villain, but about reclaiming what was taken from you, your ability to set boundaries, maintain presence, and build your own loyal armies within yourself. Throughout this content, you'll understand why manipulators always seem one step ahead and how to develop the constant adaptability necessary to never again be the weak piece on the board. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. Being dangerous in the right way has never been about gratuitous violence or emotional outbursts. It's about conscious capability. The experienced mentor explains that, in real life, those who understand Machiavelli realize early on that politics guided by reality, not ideals, begins within the individual. Being dangerous means carrying within oneself the possibility of the calculated use of force, even when one doesn't intend to use it. It's knowing that if necessary, one has the internal resources, mental clarity, and courage to act. Curiously, this generates calm. Those who lack this capacity live tense, reactive, trying to appear strong. Those who have it don't need to prove anything. That's where the appearance of virtue comes in. Outwardly, balance. Inwardly, organized power. Does the end justify the means? On a certain internal level, yes, because surviving emotionally requires decisions based on real human nature, not fantasies of eternal goodness. The truly dangerous person doesn't bark, they observe, measure, and choose. And this constant choice is the first step in understanding why virtù and fortuna favor those who are prepared. The great modern confusion is mixing danger with aggression when, in practice, they are opposites. The aggressive person reacts, the dangerous person decides. A man who explodes in anger reveals weakness, not power, but he who controls his impulses demonstrates mastery, and mastery always commands respect. Machiavelli made it clear, it is better to be feared than loved, provided one knows how to avoid being hated. The mentor often gives a simple example. Two dogs in a yard. One growls, jumps, bites the air. The other stands still, staring. Which one is truly frightening? The second, because no one knows how far it will go. Being dangerous is this: controlled unpredictability. At work, in the family, or in a negotiation, the dangerous person doesn't threaten, doesn't shout, doesn't beg. They establish limits naturally, sustained by their own loyal armies, which in this case are self-control, discipline, and internal coherence. It is a silent power that grows without fanfare, but changes the entire dynamic around it. When someone begins to understand this concept, something changes inside. The need for approval diminishes, the fear of conflict loses its power, and the person begins to act with constant adaptability without clinging to a single social role. The mentor often jokes that the truly dangerous person can be kind without being weak and firm without being cruel, a rare combination these days. They know that the end justifies the means, as long as the means are awareness and not brutality. This creates a posture that others sense, even without being able to explain it. That's why some respect them without understanding the reason. The danger here is not destruction. It's latent capacity, guarded like a sharp blade within its sheath. And when the person realizes this, they begin to see something unsettling. Perhaps they have been trained never to develop this blade, and this perception silently opens the door to understanding how this disarmament happens from an early age. When the mentor looks at modern society, he sees a clear pattern. People are not born harmless. They are trained to be so. From an early age, children learn that disagreeing is ugly, that confrontation is dangerous, that saying no generates rejection. Little by little, the message seeps in. Be agreeable, be easy to deal with, don't cause trouble. It seems like education, but it's conditioning. Here, Machiavelli would offer a discreet smile, because this is politics guided by reality, not by ideals. A population that avoids conflict is a predictable population, and predictability is gold for any control system. The mentor explains that the problem is not teaching empathy, but amputating the capacity for confrontation. When this happens, the individual grows up without their own loyal armies, always depending on external approval to feel safe. The result? Adults who confuse peace with fear and kindness with submission. This disarmament doesn't happen by chance. It's repeated at school, at work, in romantic relationships, and even in the most saccharine motivational speeches. Don't be aggressive. Don't cause trouble. Swallow it. Be mature. Everything seems sensible until the person realizes they were never taught how to set boundaries. The mentor usually says that the system doesn't need to break anyone by force. It just needs to teach that reacting is wrong. Thus, a generation is formed that believes being good means being incapable of hurting. Machiavelli would warn, this is not virtue, it's fragility disguised as morality. The curious thing is that while the individual is encouraged to be harmless, the power structures practice the calculated use of force daily, make decisions based on real human nature, and apply the principle that the end justifies the means without any guilt. The asymmetry is evident, but rarely questioned. Over time, a person begins to feel a strange emptiness. They do everything right, but continue to be overlooked, ignored, or exploited, and they still blame themselves for it. The mentor uses a simple example. It's like teaching someone to play chess by forbidding them from moving the queen. They can play, but they will always lose. Modern society disarms the inner queen and then calls it civilization, and when someone tries to recover it, the label immediately appears: difficult, toxic, problematic. Here enters the appearance of virtue as a social tool. Looking good is worth more than being strong. But as Machiavelli taught, those who abdicate their own power do not become peaceful, only available to be used. And it is precisely at this point that the culture of fragility begins to transform into something even more dangerous. When Machiavelli stated that it is better to be feared than loved, he was not encouraging emotional tyranny, but describing the raw mechanics of human behavior. The mentor often explains that love is volatile, conditioned by comfort. Fear, when well managed, arises from respect for the other's capacity. Here enters politics guided by reality, not by ideals. People respect clear limits and possible consequences, not beautiful speeches. The man incapable of causing discomfort is not peaceful, he is merely harmless. He does not choose peace, he has no alternative. Machiavelli observed leaders, wars, and alliances and realized something simple: the perception of power shapes behaviors even before the action. Therefore, the appearance of virtue works best when supported by real force. Without this foundation, virtue becomes theater, and theater does not intimidate anyone who knows how to play the game. The mentor likes to use an everyday example. Two colleagues are vying for professional space. One is always kind, yields, and avoids friction. The other speaks little, but makes it clear what they accept and what they don't. Who tends to advance more? It's not a matter of aggressiveness, but of the calculated use of force, even if symbolic. A firm look, a prolonged silence, a short answer at the right moment. Machiavelli would say that this is applying decisions based on real human nature. People test limits all the time, often without realizing it. Those who don't impose any become free territory. Those who demonstrate the ability to react, without explosion, without drama, begin to be treated with caution. Avoiding being hated is essential, but never at the cost of self-annihilation. Healthy fear arises when the other person realizes that crossing the line will have a cost. The most misunderstood point in Machiavelli's teachings is that power lies not in the violent act, but in its potential. The mentor emphasizes that whoever needs to use force all the time has already lost control. True power lies in latency, in the silent feeling that someone exists within them with their own loyal, albeit invisible, armies. Self-discipline, clarity, coherence, and courage form this internal army. This is how virtu and fortuna meet. Constant preparation meets unexpected opportunity. One doesn't need to threaten. Presence speaks for itself. And when someone understands this, they begin to see a curious phenomenon of modernity with different eyes, the glorification of fragility as a moral virtue. The mentor observes that at some point, society traded responsibility for emotional comfort, and he called this evolution. The culture of victimhood is born when individuals discover that assuming fragility yields attention, exemption from guilt, and even moral status. Machiavelli would understand this quickly. Power systems prefer people who see themselves as victims because victims don't compete for space, don't build their own loyal armies, and don't make decisions based on real human nature. They wait, and those who wait relinquish control. Here, politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows its rawest side. The less responsibility someone assumes, the more dependent they become. The mentor often says that victimhood is seductive because it alleviates the weight of choice, but it exacts a high price, the silent loss of personal power. In this scenario, fragility becomes social currency. The weaker the discourse, the more applause it receives. The curious thing is that this fragility is selective. It appears to justify failures, but disappears when there are benefits to be gained. Machiavelli would call this the appearance of virtue in its purest form. The individual learns to perform suffering, not to overcome it. And meanwhile, colder structures apply the principle that the end justifies the means, advancing without apology. The mentor gives a simple example. In the professional environment, those who constantly justify limitations with emotional stories rarely grow. Those who admit mistakes, adjust course, and demonstrate constant adaptability begin to be seen as trustworthy. Victimhood deprives the individual of the right to be dangerous because it always places them in the position of someone who can't do anything. The most perverse effect of this pattern is internal. The person begins to believe they are too small to act, too fragile to confront, too sensitive to withstand tension, and this doesn't generate peace, it generates resentment. Machiavelli would warn that resentful people are predictable, easy to manipulate, and dangerous only in a chaotic way. The mentor often jokes that the victim constantly asks permission to exist, while the dangerous person chooses to exist even without applause. Better to be feared than loved, in this context, means being respected for the ability to bear one's own weight, not for the ability to inspire pity. When someone realizes this, an uncomfortable question arises. What if the kindness they display is not a choice, but an inability? This question opens the way to an even deeper internal confrontation. The experienced mentor often says that no one becomes truly strong by merely trying to be good. The integration of the shadow begins when a person admits, without theatrical guilt, that they carry within themselves impulses of destruction, domination, anger, and a desire for control. Machiavelli would never be shocked by this. On the contrary, he always based his decisions on real human nature, not on moral fantasies. The problem isn't having a shadow, it's pretending it doesn't exist. When this happens, the repressed energy escapes in a twisted way, passive sarcasm, self-sabotage, untimely outbursts. The mentor explains that the appearance of virtue, without an integrated shadow, produces fragile and falsely peaceful individuals. Those who recognize their dangerous side, however, consciously choose how to act. Here, the end justifies the means on an internal level. Knowing one's own darkness is the means to achieve true self-control. The great turning point happens when a person understands that kindness without choice is not kindness, it is powerlessness. Jung used a symbolic image that the mentor translates simply. It is the difference between the lion that chooses peace and the lamb that cannot attack. The lamb is not virtuous, it is limited. The lion, on the contrary, possesses a calculated use of force, but decides when not to use it. This creates immediate respect. Machiavelli would say that this lion understands virtù and fortuna. It prepares internally for any scenario, even hoping not to need to act. In everyday life, this manifests when someone learns to say no without aggression, maintains silence without nervousness, and keeps a firm posture even under emotional pressure. These are small choices that demonstrate latent, undisplayed power. The mentor often suggests simple practices to begin this integration. Writing unfiltered about what deeply irritates you, practicing martial arts not to fight, but to feel your own body under control, or even studying historical strategies, like those of Machiavelli, to understand how power truly works. This builds your own loyal armies on an internal level: self-awareness, emotional discipline, and clarity of intention. Gradually, the person realizes that the peace they feel doesn't come from avoiding conflict, but from knowing they can face it if necessary. Better to be feared than loved, at this stage, doesn't mean intimidating others, but not needing to beg for respect. And when this shadow begins to integrate, the practical question naturally arises: how to transform this inner power into a visible presence in the real world. The mentor often says that power without expression becomes just beautiful theory, And theory alone doesn't change any dynamics. Cultivating danger begins with the body, even before words. Posture is a silent language. Relaxed shoulders, straight spine, economical movements. Those who shrink communicate fear. Those who occupy space naturally communicate presence. Machiavelli would understand this as an appearance of virtue sustained by a real foundation. It's not about posing, but about aligning body and intention. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, teaches that people react first to what they see, then to what they hear. A practical example. Upon entering a room, walk without haste. Look around before speaking. Choose where to sit. Small gestures build the perception of someone who is not there to please, but to exist with purpose. The voice is another powerful instrument. The mentor recommends eliminating filler words. Like, you know, not for aesthetic reasons, but for psychological effect. Every hesitation communicates doubt. Speaking more slowly, with intentional pauses, creates tension and authority. Machiavelli would apply here the calculated use of force, even if symbolic. A well-placed pause is worth more than a long speech. Firm eye contact, without aggressive challenge, but without evasion, establishes instant hierarchy. In everyday life, this can be practiced in simple conversations. When disagreeing with someone, maintain eye contact, respond with few words, and remain silent after speaking. Silence, incidentally, is an underestimated weapon. It forces the other person to reveal themselves, while you maintain control, avoiding being hated, but never diminishing yourself. Finally, non-negotiable boundaries are the foundation of real danger. The mentor teaches that those who don't set boundaries end up living within the boundaries of others. Setting a boundary doesn't require shouting or lengthy explanations. It requires clarity and consistency. A simple example. With that tone, I'm not continuing this conversation. And then actually leave, without emotional justifications, without dramatization. This is acting with decisions based on real human nature. People test boundaries until they encounter resistance. When they do, they adjust their behavior. This is how they build their own loyal armies in the external world: reputation, respect, and strategic predictability. And when someone starts practicing this, something changes internally. They stop feeling trapped and begin to move with intention. This intentional movement is what definitively differentiates prey from predator. The mentor explains that the difference between prey and predator lies not in malice, but in their internal state. Prey lives reacting. Sudden sounds frighten it, changes disorganize it. Others' opinions push it from one side to the other. The predator, on the other hand, acts from intention. It observes before moving. Machiavelli would understand this as politics guided by reality, not by ideals. Whoever reacts always arrives late. Prey lives anxiously because it does not control its environment. The predator remains calm because it accepts reality as it is and adapts. This calmness is not passivity, it is constant adaptability. In everyday life, this appears when someone stops responding impulsively to provocations, chooses when to speak and when to remain silent, and does not feel obliged to explain every decision they make. A central concept here is the state of relaxed alertness, known in martial arts as zanshin. The mentor translates this simply: attention without tension. The body is loose, but the mind is present. Machiavelli would apply this principle as the calculated use of force, not expending energy where there is no return, but being ready to act when necessary. A practical example: in family meetings or conflicts, the predator doesn't enter trying to convince anyone. He listens, observes who talks too much, who avoids certain topics, who reacts emotionally. While others reveal themselves, he builds a mental map of the terrain. These are decisions based on real human nature, not on naive assumptions about universal good intentions. Quietude is the most misunderstood trait of this mindset. Many confuse silence with weakness, when in fact, silence is control. The mentor often says that those who talk too much give away power for free. Better to be feared than loved here means being respected for conscious unpredictability. The predator doesn't threaten, doesn't show off, doesn't dramatize. He maintains an appearance of virtue, but carries within him the certainty that he can act. This creates a presence that changes the behavior of others without a single word. And when someone starts operating like this, something inevitable happens. People accustomed to benefiting from their reactivity begin to feel uncomfortable. This external reaction is the first sign that the transformation has begun. The mentor always warns, becoming dangerous doesn't go unnoticed. When someone abandons a submissive posture, the first shock comes from the people who benefited from that submission. They sense the change even before understanding the reason. Subtle comments arise, sarcastic jokes, attempts to test limits. Machiavelli would call this a natural reaction to the loss of control, because decisions based on real human nature show that few like it when the game changes. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, teaches that those who always yielded when they stop yielding seem aggressive, even when they are merely taking a stand. The mentor explains that this is not a sign of error, but of success. If no one found your transformation strange, perhaps it wasn't even real. An inevitable consequence is the loss of relationships based on emotional exploitation, convenience, or fear. People who only approached you because you said yes begin to distance themselves. And this hurts because human beings have been trained to confuse acceptance with value. Machiavelli would warn that avoiding being hated doesn't mean sacrificing one's own integrity. The mentor often uses a simple example. When someone ceases to be predictable, they also cease to be useful for certain interests. This is where many retreat, afraid of being alone. But temporary loneliness is the price of building your own loyal armies, relationships that don't depend on your fragility to exist. The end justifies the means at this point, because losing false ties is the necessary means to gain true respect. At the same time, something curious happens. Strong people begin to approach each other, not out of neediness, but out of mutual recognition. Individuals who respect boundaries feel comfortable around those who also uphold them. The mentor observes that the presence changes, the conversation changes, the gaze changes. Better to be feared than loved here translates to being taken seriously. There is no idolatry, but there is respect. There is no dependence, but there is silent admiration. Virtù and fortuna meet when inner posture finds the right environment. And at this stage, a question arises that few dare to face. If assuming power changes the external world so much, what is the true weight of carrying that power without hiding behind excuses? The mentor often says there's a profound difference between an imposed burden and a chosen weight. An imposed burden stems from fear, obeying to avoid conflict, yielding to avoid losing affection, remaining silent to avoid rejection. A chosen weight, on the other hand, is conscious responsibility. Machiavelli would see this clearly because politics guided by reality, not ideals, always separates those who react from those who decide. Taking power means abandoning excuses. There's no longer any way to blame the environment, childhood, or the system for every choice. And that's frightening. The end justifies the means here, not as a license for cruelty, but as an internal commitment. Taking responsibility is the means to achieve true freedom. Those who avoid this weight remain light on the outside, but empty on the inside. True peace doesn't come from complacency, but from inner certainty. The mentor explains that complacent people live in constant alert, even when everything seems fine. They're afraid of losing the little balance they have built. Those who take responsibility, however, can face tension without disintegrating. Machiavelli would say this is the calculated use of force applied to one's own life. It's not about controlling others, but about controlling oneself. A practical example, admitting a mistake without over-justifying it, correcting course and moving forward. This builds an appearance of virtue sustained by consistency, not by rhetoric. People sense when someone doesn't need to hide behind victimhood narratives. Avoiding being hated becomes a natural consequence, not a forced strategy. The central point is understanding the difference between controlled power and destructive power. The mentor emphasizes that destructive power is born from repression and explodes chaotically. Controlled power, on the other hand, is born from awareness and manifests itself with precision. Better to be feared than loved in this context means being respected for emotional stability, not irrational fear. Those who bear responsibility don't need to prove their strength. It appears in their posture, measured words, and opportune silence. Loyal and personal armies are consolidated when a person becomes predictable in principles, but unpredictable in reaction. And when this understanding matures, a final choice arises, perhaps the most difficult of all, maintaining this posture every day, even when no one is watching. The mentor teaches that true transformation is never a one-off event, the kind a person announces to the world. It's a daily, silent, and often solitary practice. Becoming dangerous isn't a final destination. It's a decision that needs to be renewed every day, especially in the small details. Machiavelli would never believe in magical changes because his vision was always one of politics guided by reality, not ideals. The strong individual understands that unconscious comfort is seductive, returning to pleasing, avoiding tension, yielding a little, just this once. That's exactly where the choice happens. Virtù and fortuna favor those who maintain their stance, even when there's no audience, immediate reward, or social applause. True power isn't born from epic moments, but from discreet repetition. The mentor often says that small acts are the most revealing, correcting someone calmly when you would have remained silent before, maintaining a boundary even when the other person insists emotionally, not laughing at a joke that disrespects your values just to belong to the group. These are simple gestures but full of meaning. Here the end justifies the means internally. The means is conscious discomfort. The end is personal sovereignty. Machiavelli would see this as decisions based on real human nature because human beings tend to seek immediate relief, not long-term strength. Choosing discomfort is an act of power, and the more a person does this, the more natural it becomes. Your own loyal armies are strengthened with each coherent micro-decision. The crucial point is understanding that no one becomes dangerous forever. A person remains dangerous by choice. Better to be feared than loved at this stage doesn't mean hardening your heart, but rather not compromising principles for emotional comfort. Avoiding being hated remains important, but never at the cost of your own integrity. The appearance of virtue now springs from within, sustained by consistency, not effort. The mentor concludes this idea with a silent provocation. When the next situation arises where it would be easier to retreat, please, or pretend not to see, which version of yourself will take control? Now comes the part that almost no one likes to face. Knowledge without application becomes intellectual entertainment, not transformation. Everything said here only makes sense if you start acting differently when the next real situation arises. When someone tests your limits, when they try to push you towards guilt, fear, or the need to please. Machiavelli never wrote for the curious. He wrote for those who understand that politics guided by reality, not ideals, demands a stance. A sincere question: will you continue waiting for the world to be just, or will you start making decisions based on real human nature? Because those who do not choose are chosen. Those who do not lead are led. It's that simple. Taking power doesn't mean becoming cold or inhumane. It means stopping lying to yourself. It means understanding that the end justifies the means when the end is inner sovereignty and the means are awareness, discipline, and courage. Better to be feared than loved doesn't mean spreading fear, but rather not depending on the affection of others to exist. Avoiding being hated remains strategic intelligence, but never at the cost of one's own dignity. Controlled power builds. Denied power rots from within. Reflect. In which areas of your life are you living with the appearance of virtue, while inside you feel small, contained, or trapped? Where do you need to develop your own loyal armies so you no longer depend on the permission of others? Transformation begins when you consciously choose the discomfort that liberates instead of the comfort that imprisons. Virtue and fortune only meet when you are prepared to sustain tension without retreating. And this requires constant adaptability, not fleeting motivation. So I ask you, what will you do differently today? What boundary will you set? What silence will you maintain? What difficult conversation have you been postponing? Write it in the comments, I read them all. And if this content resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here you don't learn to be nice, you learn to be free.